Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Well, another huge week in terms of global financial headlines as well as the cryptocurrency markets. We've got our biggest ever cryptocurrency giveaway, so find out how you can get $100 of Bitcoin, and we do welcome over 1,000 new subscribers. It's literally been our biggest week ever with over 100,000 views, making Shapeshift's top 10 podcast globally list and locking in Andreas Antonopoulos for an interview next month. So look, thank you all so much for supporting the channel, particularly our premium members in our Facebook community. None of this is possible without you guys. And to celebrate, we do want to give away $100 of Bitcoin and a 10% deposit bonus when you sign up with eToro. Now, a lot of you are interested in trading stocks, ETFs, gold, and this app is a nice, easy way to do that. So, a bit of an exclusive. Check out the link below for more details, but certainly something I think is going to interest a lot of you out there. Now, before we get into the local news, we are heading down to Launceston, Tassie this week on the Crypto Roadshow, so I hope to see plenty of you there and more stops around Australia before the end of the year. Okay, into the local news. So, CBA, CommBank have had a number of outages this week, and this forced entire branches to shut down. So plenty of you were affected by this. Let me know in the comments below how bad it was. But we also saw Northern Territory community grind to a halt for a number of days when some of their welfare card fails. So all of this just shows the reliance on these digital systems. And when we know they're moving towards phasing out cash and those sort of payments, this is what worries me at a time when people can be left stranded when we live day to day. Another thing we saw this week was Josh Frydenberg asking the ACCC to investigate the banks for not passing on rate cuts. But you have to remember that banks have got those depositors that want high interest rates as well. So the baby boomers, that retirement generation, they rely on that yield as their income. So banks are really between a rock and a hard place because we know lower interest rates hurt their profits and even their stability, and that's something we'll get into shortly as well. So the Australian economy is now tipped to grow slower than Greece. We know that those tax cuts didn't really work to stimulate the economy. A lot of people didn't spend those. They used it to pay down debt, which is something that we did predict. We've also seen Peter Costello coming out and saying that ultra-low rates are fueling political extremism. So I believe that this is certainly the case. We've seen inequality and we see civil unrest. I think that is going to continue going forward. And it all comes back to this, the financial system, which is straining the majority of people. So we saw Phil Lowe say that negative interest rates are unlikely in Australia, but he was talking about raising interest rates a year ago, and we know that central banks have got the worst track record at predicting what's coming next. So even if he's committed to not going negative, it just means that they're going to have to ramp up QE or try something else that's crazy and untested to stimulate the economy as the global growth and the local economy slows down. So maybe he's got another party trick that we're not aware of yet if he doesn't plan on taking interest rates negative. Something else that was interesting this week was the updated terms and conditions for ANZ, and a lot of banks have similar murky terms, but basically saying that they can block access to your account if they consider that it's legitimate to do so, or if it's to protect them from suffering a financial loss. So this is around those bail-in laws where they can give you a shorter notice than 30 days if it's to help prevent them from taking a material credit loss or material loss. And they can impose limits on the amount of cash that you can withdraw over the counter at any branch. So fractional reserve banking, you guys know the drill. You've heard this 100 times before. As soon as people try to get money out of the system, it's going to collapse. Now, China's economy hit a three-decade low, so GDP is still growing at 6%, which a lot of countries would be jealous of, but certainly slowing compared to their recent growth. And we know that that's the case when we look at global manufacturing. We've seen so much money come out of China now, and particularly that money that's trying to escape Hong Kong. There's lots of money that is trying to get across borders, and that's where we see more and more use of Bitcoin and stablecoins. So this is all a political game of chess. I've spoken about this a fair bit. China helping to bail out Turkey to sort of protect them from those US tariffs and whatnot. We've seen China make a move to team up with OPEC's number 2 country, Iraq, after they'd been trying to work more with Iran and got a bit of global pushback. Russia ready to seize control of Venezuela's world's largest oil reserves. It's all about the power. I've got that book behind me on the shelf of Marin Katusis talking about the global Colder War in terms of whoever's got the energy basically has the power going forward. Now, Hong Kong protests have been in the news, but lately we've had Chile as well. So an electric company wanted to drastically raise prices. They're starting to experience inflation, just like all these other countries we talk about. You've heard me say one by one, more and more of these nations, their local currency is just going to lose its purchasing power, and things like this are going to happen. Civil unrest, and more people will turn to Bitcoin, gold, those sort of options. So Brexit has seen a delay. Boris Johnson didn't get his way here. It doesn't look like they're going to be leaving by October 30, which is what was promised. And we've also seen US impose those tariffs on European goods lately, and now Europe are vowing to retaliate back. So look, global trade is going to continue to slow if we're just all tariffing each other and we've got civil unrest. Now, the US stock market is still near record highs. In Australia, we're creeping up there as well because of the monetary policy. And you guys know, you've heard me say it 100 times, fundamentals are out the window. As long as central banks are lowering rates and printing money, stock market's going to go up. It doesn't make sense, but that's just the way it is for now. So the buyback period for S&P 500 companies, really begins to taper off steeply now. You can see there on this nice graph. What does this mean? Stock buybacks that have been, propping up stock prices are going to slow down, and prices are likely to fall. Now, we've seen insider trading and insider selling hit a 2-decade high. So what does that mean? The guys at the top have unloaded their stocks. And at the same time, great article here by Roger Montgomery, we've seen a record amount of money fly out of stocks and into bonds. So once you make your wealth and you want to protect it, you rotate into bonds or, gold, maybe cash, but bonds are really seen as that safe option, particularly when central banks are starting to buy more bonds again. So it is crazy to watch how this is unfolding and who's going to be left holding the bag with these high valuation, assets around the globe. And this is why QE4 has unofficially, maybe now it is official because the Fed are buying treasuries again. 4 times oversubscribed. All these banks, they need that liquidity to shore up their reserves, and this is now a daily operation with the central bank buying these assets off the different banks. Interestingly enough, the IMF has admitted that this is a policy error. It's been pushing this for years, and it's led the world to disaster. Inequality, economy slowing, and now central banks are even admitting and warning that if the system collapses, you'll need gold to start over. So some central banks have still got a lot of gold, even enough to back up half or 3/4 of their reserves. Someone like the US says that they've got a lot of gold. It's all tit for tat, rehypothecated. We don't know who's got what. That's why it's great to see gold actually on a blockchain that's audited these days. But certainly this talk of the system resetting is something that no one would have thought you'd see from mainstream bankers, a year or two ago. We now see all these countries wanting to launch their own gold trading platforms, have their own clearing houses, and hold their own gold rather than relying on other people to do it. So those big names there that we've spoken about a lot on the channel, we know that they've got plenty of gold and they continue to hoard it. So yeah, just a reminder once again, if you do want to trade gold or ETFs, you can do that on the eToro app and make the most of that free deposit bonus there. All right, so Bitcoin has apparently failed according to the Bank of International Settlements and the G7, but stablecoins are a threat. So I'm not really sure how Bitcoin has failed. They're saying because it's volatile. Look, something that's up, 100,000% in its lifetime and has been the best performing asset. More people are using it every day. I'm not really sure how you can say that that is a failure, but we know that the powers that be are going to crack down on crypto. So those FATF rules, labeling stablecoins, a real threat because of money laundering, this, that, and the other. Unfortunately, this week we did see this story about Chainalysis helping the Department of Justice to shut down one of these, dark web websites. But this is one of the features of Bitcoin. It's not a downfall. We know when the bad guys use it, you can track it. So I'm not really sure how this is a bad thing, but obviously we're going to get told that this is all Bitcoin gets used for, yada, yada. But if you're a subscriber to the channel, you know that's certainly not the case. So now we've got Canada exploring digital currencies to track people's spending habits. It's a nice way of saying monitor everything you do. And a former CFTC chairman saying that, it's time for a digital US dollar. We've got to get up to speed with everyone else that's doing this. And again, they're going to be able to track everything that you do. So this is already happening with plenty of the USD stable coins. We've seen Bermuda now accepting taxes and government services can be paid as well. All these countries with these weakening local currencies, it's so easy to turn to a USD stable coin. Some of them are using that DAI, the decentralized one, but this is just fantastic to see. Blockchain is taking over regardless of its form, and that underlying fiat currency, once that starts to weaken, the actual US dollar that's pegging these currencies, that's when people are going to go, well, hold on, what is anything backed by, and really turn aggressively to Bitcoin, to gold, to those things which have a scarce fixed supply. Now, last week we spoke about Binance's announcement that you could now get Bitcoin traded through Alipay and WeChat, and Alipay came back and pushed back, but it is just a grey area. So they're saying that, we're going to monitor it, and if we see it, we can shut your account down. But, it's one of those things that's just not really spoken about. It lives in the shadows. Another option that we've seen in Hong Kong is people actually selling assets from the Gods Unchained game. So they took a stance, political stance on what's going on in Hong Kong, and it's really worked in their favor. So fantastic project, the Aussie guys that are really doing well, and well done on that move. They took a risk, and it appears to be paying off with a lot of people using in-game assets as currency now. Another big announcement that went mostly unnoticed was around Nexus. So Steve Wozniak, who's one of the co-founders of Apple, announcing a partnership with Nexus. And this, it pumped 20 or 30%, but barely anything. This project is still down 99% from all-time highs. So I did a write-up for members this week. This is one that I do own. I've been picking up a little bit of here and there in crypto winter. And look, I think that they've got some fantastic tech, but I'm going to talk about that more in a dedicated episode soon. Samsung is the latest to pilot a blockchain-based medical insurance network. So, look, I have to laugh when these maximalists say that Bitcoin is the only use of blockchain. One by one, whether it's God's Unchained game, medical insurance. We've seen the biggest ticket seller on Broadway now using IBM blockchain. So there's so many good use cases. You guys know the story. Don't believe some of those maximalists out there. Deutsche Bank tokenizing a bond on EOS this time. We've seen a lot of those bonds happen on the Ethereum chain or some private chains, but I guess well done to EOS for getting in the mix there. Deutsche Bank, I'm not sure if that's the bank that you want to have bonds on, but either way, a step in the right direction. So Litecoin turned 8 this week. Huge community, 8-year track record. Charlie Lee is going to make sure that the Litecoin Foundation never go bankrupt. He's got pretty deep pockets after he sold his bags near the highs, and the Litecoin Foundation have still got plenty of money there for at least the next 2 years. Now, one of the things I think they're going to do is implement privacy before Bitcoin, and that is going to lead to another big excitement cycle for Litecoin. But we saw a breakthrough from Zcash with this Halo technology. So this is a proof of proofs, basically, and it's going to be able to make everything more private but far more efficient. They're talking about the amount of space and storage needed to store or verify the whole blockchain. That's really going to decrease if we can make a proof of the proof of work that's been done. So HTC, the first phone that can run a full Bitcoin node, fantastic to see that even a little phone can have a full copy of the blockchain. And as I just spoke about, that actually amount of data is hopefully going to get smaller and smaller going forward. And we've also seen that Zcash are going to be partnering up with Ethereum, joining the DeFi ecosystem, and implementing privacy and interoperability is the thing that I'm most looking forward to. Now we've got the ZK Snark privacy on Ethereum as well as Zcash. Now, one of my favorite projects in the DeFi space is Synthetics. They've got a range of synthetic assets. They're doing so much fantastic stuff, and I know there's more coming. But in terms of price, this one is now up over 1,000% since we covered it for you guys after EdCon. So I hope some of you have made some nice gains on Synthetics. Ethereum name service launching multi-coin wallet support, 15 wallets to integrate this. So lately, I've seen a lot of people, I guess, shilling some of these .crypto and .zil addresses, but the .e service has been around for a couple of years now, where you're going to be able to send your coins to nuggetsnews.eth or johnsmith.eth. This is all going to be integrated into the most common wallet, so you don't have to remember that long string of complicated numbers of letters that is your address. I also did a video for members a year ago to reserve some of those good domain names, so I hope some of you guys pick those up cheap. Now, something I think is going to unfold is Bitcoin just becoming part of everyday culture. So Satoshi has been added to the English dictionary. We've seen Tim Draper come out and say that Bitcoin is going to, end the reign of dictators and the toll trolls. So these leechers that just, take their fee, they're a middleman, they're not doing anything productive for the economy. That's what the entire financial system has really become these days, and cutting that out is going to lead to a lot more, freedom for everyday people. And the ex-CEO of Google Africa saying that Bitcoin is a gift that will change humanity. So listen to what the right people are saying, not the, wrong people. I don't want to do a Craig Wright pun there. Not the Neuro Robinis of the world, okay? Listen to these entrepreneurs, these disruptors that are on the right side and working with Bitcoin. In terms of investment, we've seen Fidelity now do their full rollout after a bit of a test trial there. So crypto custody services, we're seeing a different demographic now invested in crypto because of how the space has matured and the security, the insurance available. So these stats from the Independent Reserve Exchange in Australia are seeing a huge increase in the number of those between 45, 55, 65. These sort of demographics are now dipping their toe in the water. They buy the gold story, the Bitcoin story, the store of value. They've been around, they've seen market cycles, and I think they know what is coming down the line. Now, BNB did get another investment product on a Swiss exchange, so the SIX stock exchange there. Good news for BNB holders, it saw a bit of a pump, and the large cap coin thesis I've held about how the large cap coin is going to see the most money flow into them. This is really starting to come true now. We've got these insurance deposits, FDIC insurance on Binance US, which is another step in the right direction for those US traders and depositors. They can now trade far larger amounts and know that that is insured. Binance ramped up that margin to 125 times. So, FTX, which I love to trade on, has got 101 times to beat BitMEX and now 125x. It's all a bit of a competition here to beat the chest. But look, more trading means more fees, the higher amounts there. So be so careful, guys. I wouldn't recommend if you're even, intermediate to use that sort of leverage. Final thing I just wanted to say to tie this all together was last week we saw a huge increase in the amount of investment coming through the Grayscale investment trusts, particularly into Bitcoin and Ethereum, which we mentioned, but they've also just won regulatory approval for that digital currency index fund. So now sophisticated investors, again, there's another on-ramp with a company that they know and they trust to put money into these assets. So I know it's really hard at a time when price is going down. We actually saw the GBTC trust fall a little bit before the Bitcoin trust. So a really cool tweet here from Smart Contractor. The trust actually fell the day before Bitcoin fell. So a pretty accurate prediction from him there. Certainly a guy you should follow. And eToro coming out with their index that tracks sentiment on Twitter. So I think this is going to be pretty hard not to game. But we know that at the moment, sentiment is what drives these markets, and they're going to have a little portfolio of whatever's being tweeted about for you to invest in with their copy portfolio feature, which they have. So look, I'm thinking of putting a bit of an index together for you guys to mirror soon as well. I think it's another good feature of them, but I'm not sure if I'd be investing in the sentiment Twitter index just yet, but let's see how it performs. So this week's technical analysis is brought to you guys by eToro. Get that $100 free Bitcoin and 10% deposit bonus this month. All right, so last week we were talking about our important date. We've got to push up around the 13th, and if we lose that level, it is likely to roll over and continue lower out until the 30th of October. And unfortunately, that did happen. So we haven't seen the strength. At the moment, we haven't had a capitulation at the same time. So just zooming into my 4-hour chart, we're going to have a look at some of these patterns that have been getting plenty of touches and retests, and then we came back up here and false breakouts. So a true battle between the bulls and the bears at the moment, until we can get over these 4-hour moving averages and these daily moving averages. The likely path is still lower. The only thing I will say is that these areas of accumulation that we've been talking about for a while now, between around 8.8 and let's call it 7.2. So this area was where we saw a lot of that trade volume, and we knew that accumulation was likely to happen if we got in that area. So every time it's been looking like it's going to break down, we see these wicks where buyers continually step in. So whether or not this leads to an accumulation and we end up with a sort of rounded double bottom, and we don't ever get that capitulation down to 7.2, which maybe a lot of people are waiting for. But if we break that level, technically it's not looking great. We've got one last bit of support there at around 6.8. But other than that, we have to be reasonable and say that we could be heading back down to that 6,000 level that acted as support all throughout 2018. But what I will say is that there's a lot of negative sentiment. Just about every trader I know is bearish at the moment. When that happens, it means that there's only room for other people to come onto the other side of that trade. So look, altcoins still following for the most part. We've had a pretty good run up this week in XRP and BNB and a few others, but there is no reason enough for me to believe that there is an alt season here unless we sort of can carve up against Bitcoin and actually break up this head and shoulders patterns failed. Maybe we can form a little cup and handle, but keep an eye on the ETH BTC pair, the XRPs, the Litecoins of the world, to see what those altcoins are going to be doing. But for the time being, sentiment is very low towards Bitcoin. So I hope you guys have enjoyed that episode. Head over to Nuggets News for more info on anything we do. Otherwise, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around, and thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.